It's very likely from this game that you've seen memes featuring terrible Spider-Man characters. In both film and game form, Spider-Man 3 can't seem to get a break. While it's not uncommon for films to botch up their endings, it seems strange for a third game in the franchise that employs essentially the same premise and materials to fall so far behind. Because the New York subway and sewers are now explorable places, the game has a larger globe than its predecessors. But, to be honest, that doesn't seem that attractive. Rather, it sounds like awful disease carriers. While it is within the game's rights to adapt the film's story to better match the medium, almost all of the modifications are perplexing and do not add to the experience. In addition, Symbiote Peter is written in such a way that he is comically unlikable. This installment, like Spider-Man 3, falls short in both the game and the movie sectors. The game is a clone of Arkham Asylum that doesn't provide anything fresh in terms of gameplay. This game also includes a ridiculous plot about turning Cletus Cassidy, the Carnage symbiote's homicidal host, into a misunderstood crime fighter akin to Dexter Morgan. The bond between Spider-Man and Kraven the Hunter is what makes this game so compelling. In the game, Kraven lives for the thrill of the hunt, so he trains Spider-Man to be an adversary worth taking down. From a gameplay standpoint, Amazing Spider-Man is a really enjoyable, though uninspired, experience. The majority of the criticisms stem from the plot, which takes place after the events of the film. In it, half-human, half-beast chimeras wreak havoc on the city, and it's up to Spider-Man to put an end to the chaos. The ability to control Stan Lee and web swing from one skyscraper to another against the backdrop of the New York City cityscape is the game's best feature. It's not offensive, but it's a little boring. Friend or foe forgoes the usual selectable costumes found in Spider-Man games in favor of a different kind of variety, the webhead's foes. This idea promotes co-op, which is fun, but takes away from web swinging. It's not the best deal. Despite the fact that it is not expressly tied to the Raimi flicks, it is heavily implied. The majority of the featured villains are those who appear in them, and are dressed in Raimi costumes. Even if Norman Osborn, the original Green Goblin, is alive, Harry Osborn is set up to be the edgy best buddy rival who unwillingly joins forces with Spider-Man at the end of the game, implying that Harry had no cause to mount his flying snowboard in the first place. The vast majority of Spider-Man sequels appear to be inferior to their direct predecessors. The sequel to the first 3D Spider-Man game, Enter Electro, was released barely a year later. Enter Electro is a short and delightful romp that can be completed in around 5 hours, though it can be blamed on the game, because it was made in a different year. The sequel, however, does not truly innovate, except from introducing a few new characters like Beast for Spider-Man, to bounce his jabs off of. The game that ushered in the 3D action age of spider exploits. The game's mechanics are simple, because it's the first, but it has a warm appeal that brings back memories for numerous generations of Spider-Man fans. The game's introductory sequences are spoken by Stan Lee himself, establishing the tone for an adventure straight from the pages of a comic book. The game's setting isn't large, but because of Spidey's genuine encounters with other Marvel characters like Daredevil, Captain America, and the Human Torch, it manages to feel alive. The first Spider-Man film tie-in game. It's a solid outing for the Wallcrawler, scratching all the right itch at the right time. The gameplay isn't too dissimilar from one of the 5th console generation games. It has a better web swinging mechanic and feels smoother, but that was expected. Overall, the story is an extended version of Sam Raimi's debut film. It's a fun game, but it's nothing revolutionary. The usage of Bruce Campbell as a sarcastic narrator who takes the player through the tutorial and makes off-handed comments throughout the game is the game's crowning achievement. Shattered Dimensions is followed by Edge of Time. It stars 2 Spider-Men, Peter Parker and Miguel O'Hara from Spider-Man 2099, who developed a friendship in the previous game. The story of the game is more focused than that of Shattered Dimensions, and it incorporates the consequences of temporal shenanigans into the gameplay in cute and unexpected ways. Stealing schematic reports, for example, in current missions will change the structure of a building in future missions. The relative popularity of these two games rekindled interest in Spider-Man 2099, restarting his comic book run, and portraying him more prominently in the mainline stories. This is the game Spider-Man 3 aspired to be, a darker adventure that delves into the ethics of donning the symbiote suit. The moral conflict is subtly incorporated into the gameplay, making the symbiote suit more enjoyable to wield than ordinary Spidey. He loses all inhibitions and tears through foes and the environment with ruthless contempt in fight. The decision system in Web of Shadows alters the outcome of some scenes in this story. The ramifications of those decisions don't reverberate throughout the game, and the game itself isn't without issues, but the overall experience is ambitious. The fourth commercial portrays four Spider-Men from shattered dimensions, teaming up to tackle a temporal dilemma on a typical Tuesday afternoon for the Avengers. Dan Slott, who went on to write the Spider-Verse storyline in the comics in 2014, wrote the game's story. The game isn't set in an open environment, but instead focuses on a mission-based structure that caters to each spider approachmans to combat situations. People have come to equate Spider-Man with the conventional Peter Parker's moveset. Ultimate, who isn't yet Miles, dons the symbiote suit and becomes the team's heavyweight. The stealth takedowns in War's playstyle are evocative of Arkham. While 2099 is the most agile fighter, his mechanics allow him to slow down time. It's no wonder that the internet's favorite Spider-Man game makes the top 3. It's the gold standard for creating interesting in-game traversal. What can I say other than what has been said before? Despite being yet another film tie-in game, this one adds to the story and allows the player to face off against members of Spidey's rogues gallery beyond the boundaries of the film. There is no such thing as perfection, but this game comes fairly close. The delivery mini-games are the only problem in the game. The piece of theme is the music that plays throughout Dante Alighieri's Seventh Circle of Hell, as people walk through the burning sand with their bare feet, meditating on the nature of their sins as flakes of fire fall down on them. Because of its cel-shaded art style, which nicely replicates that of artist Mark Bagley, this game is criminally underestimated and stands the test of time. It also features a compelling story, which was later included into the Ultimate Canon in issues 33 to 39 and 123 to 128, before Miles took over the mantle. The Spider-Man-Venom relationship has been explored before, but Ultimate Spider-Man does it so brilliantly that it hasn't been done to this level in a game since. Throughout the story, the player shifts control between the two characters' playstyles, including allowing Venom to roam freely in the open environment. While we're on the subject, the web swinging begins slowly, before picking up speed as the player progresses through the game, demonstrating a high level of skill. While the fighting isn't as dynamic as other games, it is satisfyingly nimble, allowing Spider-Man to bounce off walls in the middle of a fight. The Spider-Man adaptation by Insomniac is unrivaled. The game boasts silky smooth fighting, as well as an even smoother and more aerodynamic web swinging that far exceeds expectations. Not many people realize it, but this game not only depicted a wonderful spider, but also a fantastic guy. Peter is brilliant, witty, awkward, and genuinely human in this scene. The tale is elevated by the character work, which crescendos in a heartbreaking final act. But Insomniac didn't stop there. Just 2 years later, they gave the fans a new chapter in this story. One in which Miles takes up the mantle and discovers what it means to be Spider-Man for himself. These adventures do a better job of capturing the core of Uncle Ben's famous aphorism than any previous games. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked the video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the page.